Everybody, welcome. So today we're talking about mixed voice technique, what this means and how we access it. So in general, when I'm talking about this principle, I think a lot of people want to over romanticize what mixed voice is, and then we actually make it like a lot harder to do. So really what we want to talk about here is that mixed voice technique is really just more advanced singing. And when we talk about registers, it's always just a teaching metaphor. And so really the idea here is that when we talk about chest voice and head voice, we're trying to get people to tune into the sensation of their voice, where they feel like the resonance is coming from. But this could actually be misleading for a lot of people. So really, in reality, um, uh, our whole concept of registration, actually, all of it is really happening in our vocal tract, has to do with how our vocal folds are coming together and what kinds of resonance we're getting and our placement. And it's not really about, like singing into our chest or singing into our head. And so those teaching principles can actually be pretty misleading. And so, really, what we want to focus on is just training our ability to switch between different registers to the point where we have a seamless transition. That's really what mixed voice technique is all about. So, I'm going to go through some different exercises, and then we'll feel it out. And this will give you a good way to start to train and understand mixed voice. And I think what happens is because we think of this like middle register as mixed voice, we end up like uh, overly trying to like change or do something different with our voice, and we get all sorts of like weird principles. Really, when we do the right kinds of exercises and learn to blend our registration together, we just end up getting um, our vocal folds will kind of transition in a smoother way. And so that smooth transition will just allow you to effortlessly start to mix. So again, I think of mixed voice technique as really just like advanced singing. And when you do these kinds of exercises over time, your voice just naturally starts to find the right kind of balance. Now, mixed voice is considered like the holy grail of singing in a lot of situations because it allows us to adjust our dynamics. It allows us to sing up in higher registers without as much effort. It gives us a little more of like an emotional sort of connection as we change our dynamics. So really what it does is it just improves the overall quality of our voice. We can also adjust the timbre. This is really like the key to advanced singing, but it really just comes from practicing a smooth transition between your different registers. And so think of it like this, like the sort of like the scientific principles behind it. When we find people doing more chest voice phonation, like our speech voice, our vocal folds are thicker together. When we do more phonation that is in our head voice, our vocal folds are on less surface area. So mixed voice is really just like everything in between. And it's like kind of like a concept of like the way we think about our it's like the way we think about like everything in the voice being like one thing or the other, and that actually again doesn't serve us. And really what we want to focus on is imagining that it's all just one smooth voice, and we're not trying to fight it, but we're trying to find a fluid transition. And so mixed voice is like everything in between these two sort of perceived states, right? Our chest voice being like hey, hey, and our head voice being like, woo, woo, right? Those are the main concepts. Um, Mixed voice is everything in between. So if I'm making a nice transition and going like, that way, you can hear it's just a smooth transition between those two different states. And my vocal folds are staying connected and even the entire time. So that's really like the main principle here. So I'm going to go through like just the process that we want to take to find this type of registration, and to find sort of sitting in the middle, and the different kinds of categories we can think about when we're doing our mixed voice. So again, like mixed voice is like a lot of different options. That's what makes it really tricky. is understanding that we have all these different systems that we can use. Um, so for this video, I'm just gonna again go through like a really nice routine, and you can follow along with me, and we'll see where it goes from there. So this is the concept. So I'm gonna start with just some basic chest voice, and I'm just gonna try to bring my chest voice up higher. And as I go higher, I want to generally think about staying light so I don't get too shouty or too pressurized. The more I try to shout or like sing with a lot of volume, the thicker my vocal fold combination is going to be. And then it's going to eventually have to crack up into a higher register. And that's what we want to avoid. That's not a really smooth register transition. It's an abrupt register transition. So I'm going to start and I just go like, na 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 na. I'm just going to take this up and I'm going to go back and forth. And you'll see with a lot of these exercises, we're trying to go on and off of our support so that we don't bear down too much and we can kind of start to do this, especially as we go higher. Again, our voice is going to naturally do this as we do the exercises. And over time, it's just going to get more comfortable sitting in these in-between places. So that's really the concept here. So I'm starting with an ah vowel, which is more chest voice conducive. So going like na 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 na. Taking it up. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. So very speech-like. Take it up about an octave. Na 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 na. So with this, you want to think about where your range is in general. So where's like the starting point of your voice, and you want to take your chest voice up about an octave to an octave and a half or so, until you start to feel maybe it's getting a little bit heavy. And then we're going to start to transition, and I'm going to kind of pull it back. So that's like chest voice area. Now I'm going to switch into head voice area. Now here with head voice, we're trying to get more volume and sort of like a thickness to the sound so that it can match with our chest voice. So a head voice tends to get too light and too breathy. And so we want this to sound more full. So we're going like this. I'm going to use chord compression exercises, going like key, 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 key. Key, 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 key. I'm using a G sound, and this is helping me get my vocal folds to come together more. So again, with head voice, it's trying to pull away and use less surface area. So by trying to get it thicker, we're getting it closer to this other direction. So first, really, we're just working on register blending, which comes from lightening up our chest voice and getting our head voice to sound more full and connected. So I'm gonna keep going with this, like key, 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 key. 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 I'm going to take this about an octave or so. So you might start it like here, like key, 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 and walk your way up and down. You'll notice in this lower area, it's harder to get a full sound. So what we want to work on is just without pushing, trying to get more resonance and just more breath support connection. And really just kind of sit here until it just sounds more full, not by pushing again, but just by kind of doing some repetition so it gets more comfortable. Key, 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 key. 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 So I do that for a while. And until I just start to get more comfortable. So you might find like, oh, I need to work on my head voice. It's starting to crack a lot there. I'm not comfortable with that type of phonation. That's going to make it a lot harder to lighten up your chest voice. So same thing if you're not used to doing a lot of chest voice and you're always singing in your head voice, it's going to make it a lot harder to get the right kind of more full kind of connection to your lower head voice area as well. So they kind of work together. And that's ultimately what we're trying to practice at first. And then we can practice doing some register jumping, which is going to start to help with this transition. So I do this kind of thing, going like na ni and I'm trying to just jump from feeling to feeling, right? So na ni without a big change externally, right? So if you're doing a lot of sort of external motion, it just means that you're not used to each register and the stability that we can get with them. So na ni and I'll take this around. So na ni na ni na ni na ni na ni. So what you'll notice is I'm basically covering a similar range, a little, kind of like middle chest voice into middle head voice and up and back, jumping from one to the other. This starts to, again, get the vocal folds used to doing this transition from chest voice to head voice and back. By engaging those muscles, it will start to just function more naturally. So I'll do it again. So I might start even a little lower, be like, na ni 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 and again, it's just like a nice free fall. I'm doing like a glorified ah ya ya. I'm not trying to jump anything like this. Na ni that's going to create the cracking because these other muscles are going to kind of get in the way of the vocal folds, making that smooth transition. So that's that idea. So we do a little bit of that kind of jumping back and forth for a bit. And that's really this concept of starting to find register transition. Now, what's hard is when we start bringing it in closer and closer. So one thing that I would suggest is going back and trying to get your chest voice up higher and keeping it nice and light by rounding over the vowels. So that's going like this. We're going to use that na thing, but now we're going to switch it to an O vowel. We're going to go like around here. No, 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 no. So really the principle here is I'm using vowel shapes to help guide my vocal folds into the right kinds of position. So I'm not trying to like, again, do all this sort of extra adjustment. That's going to make for the smoothest transition. Now, as I go higher, I'm trying to be careful that I don't get louder. So I'm going no, 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 no. Na, no, na, no, na, no. Now, what's tricky about this is I still need to use my breath support. So when people think of getting softer, they tend to come off of their body, off of their lower abdominal breath. We still want that engagement, but we just want to start to pull back the volume by thinking softer and lighter. So again, like na, no, na, no, na, no. Na, no, na, no, na, no. I'm trying to get the resonance to kind of go up back of my vocal tract and start to kind of find a higher place. I'm not trying to fight it. I'm really careful not to start to adjust my alignment. So like na, no, na, no, na, no. Na, no, na, no, na, no. might find, the first few times you do this, it's going to be a little bit loud. It's going to be a little extra. And we just try to fine tune that by doing repetition again, right? So again, don't try to like change a lot, but really just allow your voice to get comfortable in these different positions over time with consistency and practice. So again, like na no 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 na no. So right around this point for me as a tenor, above middle C and around middle C is kind of where I want to practice this. So na no 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 na no. So again, I'm still kind of chest voice dominant here, but I'm trying to keep it lighter, a little more back placed, and keep my alignment. And I'm going up to around where I start to feel my break range. So this is the other thing, is you want this to be particular to your voice. So if you're not really sure where your break range is, do those sliding exercises and start to hone in on that, right? So going like, you know, it's like right around like an F sharp for me right there. So like, when we find where that zone is, then we can start to understand sort of where we need to start adjusting and modifying things. And everyone has a break range, right? So you want to think about that. So I'm kind of purposefully coaxing it out just to feel where that is. For a lot of people, this is going to naturally crack when you get to a certain spot. When your vocal folds aren't used to doing this, right? They're just going to get kind of a little weirded out by that position. Again, the whole point of doing this is to start to get more comfortable sitting in these in-between places. So the next thing we want to do is take our head voice down and try to carry it down until it naturally transitions into that light chest voice. So for this one, I'm going to go like, ooh to ah, right? Ooh is a little more head voice like, and then ah is more chest voice like. I'm going to try to carry the head voice down as low as I can. So you might find, I'm going through that little break moment. So last week I talked about like the break range is more of an event that happens based on how we transition between a registration. So there's more like a zone where that happens. So I think sometimes people get confused, like they're like, oh, my break range is exactly at this like F sharp or exactly at this particular spot. It's going to be different depending on what kind of registration you're doing. So if I'm carrying my chest voice up higher and higher, it starts to happen for me around F sharp unless I'm thinking about mixing. Then it kind of disappears, right? Now, if I'm carrying my head voice lower and lower, it's going to be actually a lower break range usually. So again, it's an event and it just depends on how your voice is. And it's going to change a little bit based on your technique and how comfortable your vocal folds are. So again, I take this down like, until it starts to switch into chest voice. Now you might practice going back and forth like like that. can start to hear now as I'm sliding, I'm starting to get this smoother connection, right? Again, this is the whole point of the flow. So you can think of this bottom part being like our na no na no na no wa ah, ooh, ah, ooh, ah. And if I get it light enough, I can easily make that transition up into head voice and back. So I would do this for a while, right? Like ooh, ah, ooh, ah. Watch yourself, make sure you're not getting locked in place. Like ooh, ah, ooh, ah. Ooh, ah, ooh, ah. Ooh, ah, ooh, ah. Ooh, ah, ooh, ah. Right, so until that starts to find itself in like a really smooth place, where it just feels like effortless, kind of like butter. And now notice I'm actually in a fifth range. So when we were first doing like Nani, that was an octave, and it's often a little easier when we have a bigger jump. When we get closer and closer, that's when it starts to get more challenging. So that's why sliding and jumping and bringing your range in is going to help with this. So, for example, there's an exercise that we can do where we can start to feel out that transition using smaller and smaller intervals. And what I recommend with mixing is start with the light mixing first. It's easier than going into like belt mixing because we're more likely to hurt ourselves when we over pressurize. So find the light mix, then start to add in more and more chest dominant sounds, and it's going to start to get easier from there. So this next one, I'm going from chest voice into head voice using that octave, but I'm going to arpeggiate, so sing the third and the fifth as I come through that octave from 1 to 8. And I'm going to try to stay head voice dominant. So I'm going to use oo and e this time, which are going to be more narrow and are going to help me stay a little bit more in that sort of head voice placement. So I'm going to go like zoo fui, ah. So it's like I'm doing that ooh, ah, ooh, ah. But now I'm slowing it down and I'm careful that I don't go zoo, because it's going to crack, right? If I push too far forward and get too masky, that's going to be not a smooth transition, but an abrupt change, right? So instead, zoo, free, ah, zoo, free, ah. Now, as I move up and down, where I transition is going to change a little bit. That's why it's important to kind of move these exercises around. So, zoo, free, ah. Trying to make this really nice and smooth and relaxed. Try not to bite around the oo shape too much. So, zoo, free, ah. Zoo, free, ah. Zoo, free, ah. Now I'm trying to keep generally chest voice on the bottom and head voice on the top. But again, I'm kind of moving towards head voice more. So I'd move this around, just get really comfortable and find the spots where it gets kind of tricky. So with mixed voice singing, sometimes it's not just like higher that's harder. It's just dependent on the key or wherever particularly is sitting in your voice and what kind of registration you're trying to do. So, zoo, free, ah. Find where it's kind of in the middle. So, zoo, free, ah. You might find it's a little different going up versus going down. That's the whole point of doing this. And again, we're conditioning our vocal folds as we do this. So give it some time and be patient. Cracking is not an unhealthy thing to do. It's actually when we try to resist cracking and try to hold and lock and over pressurize that we tend to hurt ourselves. So when in doubt, you can always go back a step in this practice and be like, so I'm constantly trying to integrate my exercises that are a little more challenging and kind of work them that way. So like, yeah. I'm trying to find that smooth transition. So then I might go back and be like, so until it starts to get just smoother and smoother. So that's a great exercise. And then when I'm thinking about doing a little harder, I'm going to start to walk this in closer and closer. So we've got our feeling of this thing, right? These are our different sides. You feel chest voice, you'll feel the vibration here a little bit more. Head voice, you'll feel a little bit more here. Again, that's the sensation and the metaphor of different registers. So you can feel it out and be like that transition of resonance, like na that's a really helpful thing to have that sensation. So I recommend doing that. And then I'm going to walk my way up to head voice. So it's going to be like this. This is a harder exercise. So you don't have to go all the way. Just stop where it starts to get kind of stuck. So I go like, na ni na I'm trying to get lighter and lighter in my chest voice. Until I can start to kind of sit there. That takes a little bit of work, and it sort of feels like you're sort of straddling a fence. Again, you don't have to do the very top note. It's really just feeling that transition. Another one I'll do is I'll separate it with the G, so my vocal folds kind of have a chance to reset. So I'll go like, ga, 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 ga. And I'm using more neutral vowels like to So I'm going like, ga, 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 ga. This one's nice because you can move it kind of faster. So I'm going to be like, ga 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 Weird exercise. Again, keep it lean and green, and that's going to start to help you find that transition from stay connected with your breath support, and you're going to start to find this nice sort of lean transition. See if you can find more of that in-between place. So don't be in a rush getting from one side to the other. This is how we start to find our mix, right? As we start to kind of slow down in the middle. So if I'm like, it's getting my voice used to that sort of weird in-between place. Again, not sort of sitting and bearing down on it, but kind of moving through it so that the vocal folds are doing this, right? Back and forth. So let's keep going. The next thing that I'll do, and I'm aware that this is like kind of like a looks like it gets set as private. So I'm just going to record this, and hopefully it'll make it out there eventually. And you can just use this as like a private flow. So great. If that's helpful for you, and we end up using it, that's awesome. But this is obviously I'm just kind of going through like a warm-up routine with myself right now. So eventually, hopefully, you'll be doing it with me. But for now, it's sort of like a practice, and this is always kind of the way that I go through this. And it, again, it's going to be particular to every voice type that's doing it. So Now I'm starting to find more mixiness. It's even kind of changing where my voice is sitting a little bit because it's just natural as we start to stretch things out and kind of find these in between places in new timbre, we start to adjust our speech voice. And eventually, you can actually just kind of talk in certain spots. So if I'm talking up here, now my vocal folds are getting really used to this spot. Na 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 na. So again, my whole point is when we do this, we're priming our vocal folds to be in the right kind of position. So with that in mind, let's keep going, and I'm going to use that na-na thing. So we did na-na down here, right? More chest voice. Na-na, na-na, na-na. Then we went up into a lighter head voice as we go higher with na, no, na, no, na, no. Different overtone that we're using to emphasize things. Again, just helps guide us to the right kind of transition. Now I'm going to do this one for head voice, where I'm doing na and ni. And again, all modifying my vowels and using sort of my natural sort of muscle memory and sensation to guide myself towards head voice. So I'm going like nani, 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 nani. So the bottom's more chest voice, the top is more head voice. The middle, I'm trying to find that weird in between place, and I'm kind of sitting there a little bit longer. Again, I'm not trying to be like, no, I'm doing a weird mixed voice. I'm just trying to find a really smooth transition to the point where it doesn't really matter. So nani, 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 take that down. Nani, 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 It doesn't look like much because again, it's my vocal folds and the resonance, and that's really what's happening. So it takes time to kind of find this for yourself. You're not going to have like a really clear visual cue. That's why we use the vowel shapes, sensation, and sound. So nani, nani, nani. Keep it light on the bottom. Nani, nani, nani. Nani, nani, nani. Nani, nani, nani. Try this in different places in your range. So was it like low, where there's more chest voice? Nani, nani, nani. And what's it like up here, higher, where there's more head voice? Nani, nani, nani. Because we have to understand that eventually it's a transition from chest into head voice, just like when we do our sirens, like and that's again, well, ultimately the trajectory. And the hardest thing is doing all this stuff in the middle and kind of pausing there a little bit longer until we find the right kind of feeling. So that's all the kind of stuff for our light mix. Now, when we're getting to middle mix, I find, ultimately like this is just starting to lean into a little more chest dominant of a sound. And then we start to find that kind of in between place. Sometimes that's kind of tricky. So let's try to go and go a little bit towards the extreme and find a little bit more of our belt. So with this, we are keeping our alignment. We have this sensation. We've kind of coaxed our vocal folds into releasing pressure. And then we start to add in a little bit more chord compression, a little bit more chest voice phonation, and brighter mask sound, and that's going to get us more of our belt. So for this one, I'm going to use na and ne, and I'm going to kind of sit in the middle. So I'm not going to go too high, I'm not going to go too low. So it's going to be this kind of a thing. Na ne, na ne, na ne. Keep it chest and head voice for a bit. Na ne, na ne, na ne. Until it starts to naturally find that middle spot. Na ne, na ne, na ne. Na 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 na. So you can hear right there, I started to get that more sort of in between kind of placement. It'll feel kind of lean actually, and not as like heavy as you would think. So again, belt technique is actually a very light technique, but it has a very full sound because of the brightness of the resonance. So some people think, okay, chest voice is like kind of a little more like that, calling out to someone like, "Hey." We've got the head voice, which is kind of like very much like a sort of hooty kind of owl kind of a sound, like woo, 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 woo. And then the mix in the middle is kind of like a sort of almost like a duck kind of a sound, like ah, ah. It's kind of a weird thing to do, kind of using imitation sometimes is actually a really nice practice. You might be like, this is crazy, but that can actually be very helpful as we imitate animal sounds. Again, it's very light, but that's that sort of middle place that we're trying to find. So if I take this up high, I can kind of do this sort of whiny kind of a sound. That's for like kind of really high belt. Goes more towards head voice eventually, but I'm going like wah and ah, and that creates a little bit of that, or sort of predisposes our vocal folds to be a little bit more chord compressed. Don't squeeze, but try to find that sort of narrow placement, going like wah, ah. That's also kind of like a baby whine. That helps us find the top end. And then the other thing I'll do is just go Y and start to find that kind of nice, like, nya, nya, kind of bright resonance. And go like, Y, Y, Y. Don't let your head come out like this. Y, Y, Y. Why? So again, I'm trying not to be too heavy, but I'm trying to find that nice sort of bright, like why, why, and that's gonna be the way that we start to find that more belty kind of a sound. So why? And the higher we go, the more it's gonna pick up momentum. Be careful with this, right? You want to make sure that you're not locking, you're not lifting. So why, why? It's going to be a little bit more like that, and we're going to get that sort of bright sound. So that's kind of the way that we start to go into that kind of a belty position. Again, don't think of it as chest voice or head voice. It's just sort of in the middle, and ultimately, like again, mixed voice technique is really just more advanced singing. And it's just how our vocal folds adjust pressure so that we don't hurt ourselves. And then as you do that, make sure you're not coming off of your breath support. Make sure that you're not locking with these muscles. And try to do it kind of quickly. Don't bear down for too long. Just see if you can kind of pop up into that feeling, like why? Give yourself breaks. Take a moment, kind of swallow. You might even do like a little bit of water just so you're not like overbearing down. It really does miracles. So, and then reset. So, why? And sometimes, again, you'll get vocal cracks. That's just a way that your voice is like, oh, I leaned in a little too heavy. So come back, and I might do this. I might be like, na 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 na, and go back to why, until I can start to get that in a better place. So why, and again, keep it nice and light. Always you can go back to your light mixing kind of a sound. And that's sort of like the progression where we start to find our mixed voice technique in general. So what I recommend is we want to figure out and map out your range so you know where these events are more likely to occur. Then do these kinds of exercises in those zones and start to connect the dots, right? Bringing yourself in closer and closer until your voice can just naturally go from like, oh, and you can find all those sort of in between places. That's, as you can see, like if you're in a particular kind of like high belty sort of rock spot, finding that kind of placement's key. And then with a microphone, it's going to sound like really, really full. And it's actually not what people would think, right? So a lot of times when we're over singing, then we're just hurting ourselves. It's really like a trick of resonance. So map out your voice, find where these zones are, then start to practice connecting them together and that transition, and you can start to slow it down. And then you're going to get more of your sort of consistent kind of mix sound. And then eventually, yeah, you can kind of just think of like speaking in those particular spots a little bit. It's almost like speech like phonation, which is just a way of saying like we're integrating it into our natural function. So it just feels more effortless. And it's really about the placement. And what I'd recommend too is like go check out different singers and start to identify like, oh, are they using like a belt mix? Are they using like light mix? Are they transitioning back and forth? And start to kind of notate that out. And then you can, in your songs, you can actually, or in your sheet music, if you're using that, like actually notate that I want to make a transition here, and put in those little registration notes to guide yourself to like that muscle memory cue. Because a lot of times, if we're just not thinking about it and making those choices, that's when we hurt ourselves, right? When we just try to carry it up and we're not preparing with our breath. There's all this information on like when you take the right kind of breath, set it up, then I can be just in that spot. No, 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 no. Right. It's actually all in the setup and in the visualization. Doing these kinds of exercises like helps you start to uh, prepare your muscle memory and have those kinds of cues, right, with your thoughts and your intentions. Visually marking it out also really helps with that. And then listening to different people and sort of trying to figure out like what kind of strategy are they using, that's also going to really help you with this process. So again, mixed voice technique is like sometimes people way overthink it. It comes as a product of healthy singing, of working through register transitions. As you work your voice, you're naturally going to start to feel out more mixing and try out songs that naturally kind of do that, or certain artists, and emulate and imitate those sounds. And over time, it's just going to start to become more and more automatic. Again, people sometimes like overly like fixate on like the categories, and they think less about the actual technique and this balancing of different variables. That's actually more important than anything else. And from there, you actually can get a better sense of how to do your mixed voice. So I'll do particular exercises based on the kind of song and the kind of mixing that I need to do. And then sometimes people get fooled and they're like, oh, well, you just have this impossibly high range. It really has to do with actually fooling people's ear with these changes of resonance. And they're kind of zones that are just at specific spots, right? So eventually, like everyone will find out those spots and where you can make those transitions, and different voice types. It just happens in slightly different places, but it's really like acoustic events with a certain amount of energy. And so there are zones even like across different voice types where this happens. So again, hopefully this gets out there somewhere. It's, again, it seems like this was put into a private video, but I'm just kind of going through my routine like I normally would, mistakes and all, feeling out like where my voice is getting a little stuck. And again, like working through that with these exercises. And then you go back to it, every few days or so, and then you will naturally just get better and better at it, and your voice will get more resilient. Just pay attention to when it cracks, that your voice is kind of telling you some information there. Make sure you give yourself breaks and watch for any of these compensating things where we're holding, getting tight. And then over time, you're going to be able to do this better and better. And when in doubt, like if one of these things are happening, like balance it with the other strategy. So often people are going to have problems with their belting, right? When like when I was up here and like, whoa, whoa, that's where it's going to get kind of tricky sometimes. And so if I'm like, whoa, I've gone too far forward. I've come off of my breath support. So I want to go back and be like, oh, whoa. find the right kind of balance. And that's really where all of this practice comes into play. A lot of people want to just jump straight into belting practice, and that's, I don't think, is very helpful. So we work it this way first, and it's a healthier way to finding your mixed voice technique. And again, don't get so lost in the categorizing of all of this, and really just think of it as a smooth transition. And that's going to help you a lot. And then again, later, it starts to almost just feel like a character. So if I'm doing light mix, I might be in this sort of like whimsical, kind of romantic, like, yeah, whoa, yeah, whoa. And that's my light mix. It kind of sounds a little whispery. It's not whispering, but it's more just registration. Like, whoa, whoa, yeah, whoa. And if I'm going for that, like, no, that's more of that kind of belt mix kind of a sound. And hopefully you can hear that there's actually a similarity or a through line between these different things. And often, like, middle mixing is just a lot of transitioning. So if I'm like, and I, whoa, it's just kind of making it so smooth that you can't really tell the difference. So I consider, again, middle mixing as just a really, really smooth transition a lot of the time. And if you think of the vocal folds, if you were like looking in on them, they're navigating that surface area and not overly pressurizing. And that happens when we misidentify what register we're in. So again, go out, listen to different singers, pay attention to what each of your type of mixing sort of strategies sound like. And if you're having trouble with the song, switch it up. Like sometimes just changing the character, being like, you know what, I'm going to turn this into a light mix song, or I'm going to turn this into a little bit more of a belt. That actually can really help you find the right kind of energy. And so I think that's kind of the tricky thing that people will miss, is they're not just like strategizing and sort of thinking about this in that sort of technical respect. They're just kind of like hoping and guessing. And yes, eventually you can kind of do it with just like feelers. But if you're just new to this, like break it down a little bit first and be strategic. And I think that's going to really help you a lot. And again, like, you'll listen to different songs and there's different versions of people will use different things based on the voice type that they have and what they're most comfortable with. So highly recommend that. And yeah, I'm just gonna, normally I would like have questions and do some other things like responding back and forth. So I'm gonna end a little bit earlier this time, as that's my general routine for mixed voice technique. Yeah, hopefully, I'll probably end up doing this again because it was put into a private format. So as always, if you listen to this, hopefully it's helpful for you. Otherwise, I'm just perfecting my own craft, right? As this always goes. So yeah, I'm going to sign off now. And, again, good luck with your singing practice. And, hopefully this makes it to somebody's ears. Otherwise, I just am doing it on my own. So, all right. Bye now. And until next time.